Phantom of the Paradise has been in the queue for an absurdly long time, and that's because... Nah, I got nothing. I'd try to bring up the fact that I've donated so much of my time to helping the homeless, but I don't think lying is going to help. What makes this a particularly bad situation is that a lot of the runtime is taken up by music, and that's not a slight. But when you take a film that's already 90 minutes long and then add in a lot of music to it, there's not a whole lot about it that can be said from a critic who examines science fiction and fantasy point of view. I can discuss the music as best I can, but that's not in my wheelhouse. That's not even in my boat. I'll do what I can because I always try, but this is going to be a doozy, and it may come in on the short side this time. Hopefully the background video helps mitigate that somewhat. Ugh. So I guess all that's left is to take a deep breath and finally get around to doing Phantom of the Paradise. Our film opens with the background information provided by, I kid you not, Rod Serling. Rod Serling is great for exposition, provided you want it to sound horribly ominous. Mr. Bumpkin, an average Joe, needs to go to the store today. Milk, eggs, cheese, the ordinary fare for an even more ordinary man. On his way to the store, nothing eventful happened. His trip was without incident. At least that's what Mr. Bumpkin believes. And he would be correct, because it was just a trip to a normal grocery store. Anyway, here's Mrs. Fields, who's feeding her fish. So, let's start the film. There was a time when having this on my show would be weird. And it kind of still is. Normally I get singing from cartoon ponies. While they're singing their classic greaser music, Winslow Leach is taking matters into his own hands by adding the message that he's going to be playing the piano. That's some stiff competition.
He becomes quite well known, and the kindness he's shown has made more than one post-mortem star. Well, you did.
These guys are kind of assholes, though. That just means they're going to be more popular, though, doesn't it? It actually all comes down to Mr. Swan watching from his booth, whose slow clapping indicates enough approval for everyone else to cheer. He was the guy that Serling was talking about at the beginning. Swan is the biggest of the big in music. He makes Berry Gordy look like a wedding DJ. That's why Arnold Philbin, Swan's right-hand man, is complaining to him about some talent that he'd hired getting out of their agreement just because some judge thought a lifetime contract was unethical. Pah! So Swan assures Arnold, yeah, don't worry, she'll completely fall off the charts tomorrow. It'll be like no one ever heard of, or what's her name. What really has Swan's interest is the song Winslow is playing. See, Swan wants to reopen a hall called the Paradise, and he needs just the right song. And he can tell that this is it.
You want that creep to open a paradise?
But he doesn't have a single ounce of grease in his hair. Swan doesn't give a crap about, well, anyone really, but he somehow gives even less of one for Winslow. He just wants the song. Well, naturally, Winslow is thrilled at the thought, but as he explains, it's not one song. It's a series of songs that tell the story of Faust. But whatever, all Arnold needs to do is get the song.
It's terrific. You know what?
What?
I think the juicy fruits are gonna dig it.
Oof, that's like saying, don't worry about your pet rat. I'm sure my snake will love him. Winslow is aghast at how close he came to violence, but Arnold takes it in stride, assuring him that once Swan sees the music, they'll be producing Winslow's next album. I get the feeling Swan is up to something shady. But Winslow will not be so easily dissuaded, so he follows Swan back to his house and slips inside, where there's a collection of hopeful singers large enough to qualify for their own zip code. But among the cacophony, Winslow can still hear one voice, that of Phoenix, which is absolutely perfect.
I know I can sing these songs better than anybody, and with your help, I'm sure I could get a part in the chorus.
Sure, I'd love to help you.
You're not just doing this to be nice, are you?
I would never let my personal desires influence my aesthetic judgment.
Thank you, Mr. Spock. That's good to know. Well, the big heavy starts letting the girls in, but not Winslow, because this guy only knows two things: what a girl looks like and meat. And sometimes probably has trouble telling them apart. I rest my case. Phoenix isn't willing to get on stage via the casting couch, so she's tossed out, and soon Goon 1 and Goon 2 come out to grab Winslow and drag him off. While inside, we see a bunch of the girls being auditioned are lying around waiting for the inevitable orgy that's part of the job. Some of the experienced auditioners explain to the others that Swan is watching and he very much approves if they start making out with each other. Until it's revealed...
Oh, Mr. Swan, you remember me? I'm Winslow Leach.
Damn, this is even worse than if he ambushed him on the toilet.
Get this fag out of here.
If I ever saw a man in bed with a dozen horny women, the last thing I'd think is, he's obviously gay. Yeah, I know, he's probably not speaking literally. It's just I'm having trouble parsing that word coming out of his mouth. I saw him on the Muppets like 1,000 times. This is up there when the time I heard Gordon from Sesame Street call someone an asshole.
Right, Doc. You're an asshole.
I wonder how many times he said that to Oscar the Grouch. As the orgy is nearing liftoff, Swan makes a call to the cops while his goons beat the crap out of Winslow, and the cops respond to seeing his bloody body outside by planting drugs on him so they can arrest him for possession with intent.
Life!
Now get him out of here before 6-inch tall Patton shows up. In prison, Winslow is placed in a program to have all his teeth yanked out for reasons of hygiene. Strictly voluntary, of course, which is why Winslow is forced to do it against his will. But it's not that which breaks him, or rather, his will is already broken, but what causes him to absolutely, positively lose his shit beyond the ability of anybody to ever find it again is when the Juicy Fruit singing Faust comes on the radio at the prison. Winslow flips out, beats up the guard, and escapes the prison. He really makes it look easy. Some other guys have been planning for months, and Winslow just escapes through the power of berserk lunacy. He heads to Swan's corporate headquarters, where he begins attacking all the records. The albums, I mean. He is way beyond caring about paperwork right now. Well, Lady Luck is a fickle mistress. It allows you to escape prison like you were trying to avoid paying a restaurant bill, but it also has you get tangled on a record press and then get your head stuck in it while it closes.
This is a pretty hardcore origin story.
I really sympathize, but his dog whimpers are only making me want to laugh at him. Winslow evades the authorities when he falls into the East River, where he's presumed dead, like anyone who tries to swim in the East River. Soon,
Okay, let's move this ladder now. What's
Darth Vader does not approve of this music. De Palma is the kind of director that really uses the camera to the fullest, as I discussed in the companion video. For his canvas on Phantom of the Paradise, he's chosen 1.85 for his ratio for that very reason, allowing for more verticality than other films of his time that would slavishly use 2.35 because it was popular, rather than being the best tool. I don't intend to make bringing this up a habit. I just think that in this day, when so many streaming and television programs are using 2.39 in order to ape the cinematic look rather than using what would best serve the work, it's good to know when, like in my recent The Final Countdown, that the canvas fits what the film needs. For Phantom of the Paradise, there's a notable absence of horizontal motion, grand vistas, or sprawling masses. So going with 1.85 allows for a more intimate sense for the film. Obviously, this is a POV shot of Winslow, done so that when we next see him, he will be in his new incarnation as the Phantom, created when he steals costume pieces from the Paradise itself, or possibly from Battle of the Planets. While the Juicy Fruits, now in their Beach Boy style singing about carburetors, Phantom decides to give us some fun with a time bomb in the mock-up car for the band's number, the split screen showing us the progress of the bomb while everyone else is blissfully unaware. De Palma is a fan of Hitchcock, who famously compared suspense and surprise with almost this literal example. A bomb going off as a surprise, the audience knowing there's a bomb and the characters don't, is suspense. One of the singers actually has a feeling that something bad's going to happen, but Arnold drugs him to calm him down so that he'll get in a damn car. That's right, winners don't use drugs, kids. Swan listens to the recording of the incident in private to reflect upon it, and when the Phantom ambushes him, immediately sees through the costume and is surprisingly nonplussed that a guy destroyed, disfigured, and with nothing left to lose is now in a position to kill him to death. Pulling off the mask in front of the mirrors horrifies the Phantom at his own ghastly appearance. It just completely sucks the air out of this whole mad costume nemesis thing, doesn't it? In fact, Swan seems to be genuinely impressed that Winslow is this persistent. I mean, you gotta imagine this guy's fucked over a lot of people over the years, but probably very few of them have turned to a life of supervillainy as a result. He suggests that they start over.
We'll do your songs your way. You don't have to believe me. Come to the auditions and see for yourself. Trust me!
What have I ever done to make you doubt? But the next day at the auditions, the Phantom is right there in the box with Swan, checking out the singers and indicating his disapproval based upon their vocal performance, rather than how well they engage in lesbian foreplay. Phoenix is one of them, though, although she walks away when told that they're looking for screamers, not singers. But Swan convinces her to sing for them anyway, to satisfy the Phantom if nothing else. And also, he starts working to manipulate the Phantom's voice using his special equipment to try to correct for the horrible, awful disfigurement that the poor guy has undergone.
Filters. Doobies. Like a child.
The box on his chest will now allow the Phantom to talk, which is something I'm sure the world desperately needed. But Swan says that this should make a fair bargain. The Phantom gets his voice, and Phoenix to sing his music, and in return, he's to stop terrorizing the Paradise and finish writing Faust.
I don't trust you.
You don't have to. Here's a contract.
Damn, the Apple TOS is shorter than that.
All articles which are excluded shall be deemed included. What does that mean?
Oh, that's a clause to protect you, Winslow.
Well, seems fair to me. Sign away, freak. The Phantom signs the contract in blood and gets to work finishing the piece, but has no idea that Swan is actually... Oh, sorry, you better sit down for this. Screwing him over. He's going to demote Phoenix to a backup vocal rather than the singer that the Phantom wants. Swan is looking for something else and auditions a variety of vocalists. To be serious for a moment, in Phantom of the Paradise, we see a great deal of what is likely symbolism. It's just hard to tell what is symbolic and what is literal sometimes. Although that's not a criticism, it's just an observation. For instance, Winslow's trial, a judge just declaring life, while his bench is in front of a huge American flag, basically distills the entire court experience down to its essence. In the land of the free, an innocent man loses his freedom because of a wealthy and powerful enemy. In prison, after protesting his innocence, the warden says everyone innocent raise their hand, and Winslow discovers that the other three men in line with him, one Latino, one black, and one Italian, this was still back when the stereotype was that Italians were violent, dirty, and stupid. They're all raising their hands too. Now the joke can be that everyone claims that they're innocent in prison, or it can be the sober realization that these three men are all similarly being oppressed by the system. De Palma is willing to let it sit there and be whatever you want to make of it. Or take Swan and all that equipment he was using while the Phantom was trying to sing. What was he doing? Giving a voice to the voiceless, by taking him into his studio and making him sign an unfair contract. Is it the straightforward Swan is using him, or an allegory for the way the music company draws in the innocent with an offer too tempting to resist and then puts a heavy price upon it. So in this scene, is this a symbolic interpretation of the mundane act of listening to demos, or is this the power that Swan wields to summon various musicians to all perform solely at his command and with no human reaction beyond that? Or is it both, in that a recording is distilling the performer down solely to their sound, and rather than handling it as their bared soul, treating it as a commodity to be used as desired or dismissed without concern? Especially because we then hear the Phantom himself singing it as intended, an almost confessional work, speaking of embracing all the aspects of himself, the bad and the good, and yet a description of who he is now, good guy and bad guy, devils and angels, an avenger, yes, but an avenger who does harm to those who have not directly harmed him. Well, the new incarnation of the Juicy Fruits, and by the way, I know that when they were supposed to be those Beach Boy style guys, they were supposed to be the Beach Bums, but they kept referring to them as the Juicy Fruits, and even do so now, so that's why I haven't called them the Beach Bums yet. Anyway, the one selected to be the centerpiece of this new incarnation of the Juicy Fruits is Beef. Together they are the undead, introduced by Swan at a press conference before returning to collect the last pages of the cantata. To celebrate, he gives the Phantom some pills, and then bricks up the door like some cask of Amontillado ending for him. The Phantom is probably better off behind that brick wall. The scream as the Phantom awakens to discover the wall upsets Beef, who is not as tough as the glam rock exterior suggests.
Oh, I knew I shouldn't be screwing around with a dead man's music.
Although the curlers aren't really helping. So while Beef tries to calm down with a shower and some cocaine, a typical rocker's morning, I imagine, the Phantom rips his way through the bricks and the metal door and takes down Swan's two goons. He shows up in a full-on homage to Psycho. Like I said, De Palma loves his Hitchcock. But instead of murdering Beef, silences him with a toilet plunger and makes clear that anyone who tries to sing his music other than Phoenix is going to die. And I'll bet next time it'll be the other end of the plunger, and it won't be the face. Arnold catches Beef making a run for it, who makes clear he is not making this crap up. The Phantom threatened him, and this place has got some bad mojo to it. But Arnold knows the show must go on, so he drags Beef back in there and makes him do the show. In full Kiss-style makeup, the band members pretend to dismember the audience members for body parts to build their great rock creation, Beef. Well, not bad for a first try. He struts about singing for a while, but we spot the Phantom about the stage while he's doing it, and before the opening number even finishes, the Phantom hits him with a neon light in the shape of a lightning bolt. And as for Beef, well, let's just say it's such low-hanging fruit that I'm not even going to bother with it. You can guess the fate of someone called Beef. Arnold knows what's up, and so sends Phoenix out there to sing and appease the Phantom, who is so happy that all he does is garrote a light technician. Very considerate of him. She goes out and kills, although not as literally as the Phantom, obviously, but nevertheless everyone loves her, and Phoenix has fallen in love with the experience. And it's thanks to... sure as hell ain't her fairy godmother. The Phantom reveals his true identity to her and explains that they need to run away to escape all of this, because it's going to demand more than she can ever give. But if it's a choice between a cheering crowd or a homicidal cosplayer in a motorcycle helmet, well, Phoenix knows which side will likely never leave her arguing with cockroaches and making wine out of her own urine. So to his horror, the Phantom discovers Phoenix on the orgy bed with Swan, and is just unable to take it, stabbing himself in the chest. At this point, some of you might be wondering, Chuck, why in the name of Andrew Lloyd Webber are you covering this film? Well, I imagine some of you are asking that for entirely different reasons, but the reason some of you are asking is because I don't do things outside of science fiction, fantasy, or supernatural horror as a rule. Well, we've now reached the point where you see why it qualifies. Winslow is not allowed to die. Swan yanks out the knife, shows him the contract, and makes quite clear that this deal lasts until Swan's death, not his. So until the terms are completed, the Phantom is not given permission to die. Well, the answer seems pretty obvious then. Well, gotta give the man credit for trying. Well, this is a wrinkle. Normally, the avenging, tortured artist at least has murder or suicide as an option. What the hell kind of tools are left in the toolbox after that? Can't cut your ear off. It's been hot glued to the side of your head by a record press. The Faustian bargain is a classic trope, trading something positive, usually of moral worth, for something crass. Power, money, knowledge in the case of Faust, although that was even to further the ends of power. The point of the bargain is to show that what is lost is worth more than what was gained, even if at first blush it doesn't seem that way. What we see in Phantom of the Paradise is that it need not be something base. Neither Winslow nor Phoenix are interested in power or money, yet both are easily roped in by Swan nevertheless. The Faustian bargain is predicated upon one thing: the power of desire. Fiction and reality shows again and again how the power of desire can compel us to make deals or pursue ends that cheapen or even impede the very thing that was being chased. Phoenix wants the thrill of being in front of that crowd, a seemingly small and innocent thing, and yet she follows it up by voluntarily going to Swan's bed, which shows that she has lost her innocence. Winslow just wants to create his cantata without compromise. Yet this becomes an obsession that repeatedly leads to bad decisions. The contract was noticeably flawed, but he just couldn't resist signing it if that was all that seemingly stood between him and the realization of his dream. Our bad decisions almost always seemed like good ideas at the time, but the Faustian bargain shows us the devastation when we allow the temptation of our dreams to override our good sense or our integrity. There are swans out there prepared to prey upon us, but the only power over us they typically have is what we give them when they tempt us with our heart's desire. So the supernatural aspect of the work serves as allegory, of course, to this selling out. We don't need the devil. An earthly tempter is all it takes to steal our souls. The Phantom breaks into Swan's private video vault to locate a tape called Contract, while in front of the Paradise, a middle-aged woman is wondering why Swan won't acknowledge her even though they were lovers together in high school. Sure enough, the contract tape shows Swan from 20 years ago sitting in the bath, preparing to commit suicide because Swan himself has desire. Youth. He'd rather die than age, but just as he's about to slit his wrists, his reflection starts talking to him. And although Swan knows that he's stoned right now, the reflection is rather persuasive. He signs in blood as the Phantom had. We even see that again as Winslow's contract is replayed on the video. But then he sees that Phoenix is signing one as well. And that is all part of Swan's plan, see? To wed Phoenix on live television and then have her killed right there on the spot. There's even a professional assassin with a rifle ready to do the deed. Although this is a big deal, you wouldn't want an amateur doing it in front of a big TV audience. They might get stage fright. The Phantom destroys the tapes and runs off to try and thwart the assassin, and does get him to miss and shoot Arnold instead, who's playing the part of the priest. Boy, I'm going to miss that drug-pushing thief. The Phantom follows this up by pulling off Swan's mask like a Scooby-Doo episode. Only instead of the ferryman or Old Man Peterson, it's Swan with an almost cadaverous face. Well, we're not going to let a little thing like this get in the way of killing Phoenix, so Swan tries choking the life out of her on live television, which will make it hard on his lawyers, but of course he's still going to get off. Winslow intervenes, stabbing Swan repeatedly with a hat stolen from one of the dancers, and when Swan is mortally wounded, his own wound reopens, and the Phantom, sans mask, is dying right in front of Phoenix. And even as he passes away, The crowd still mindlessly frolics and cheers, some covered in blood, symbolic of the indifference of the public to these moral compromises so long as the entertainment continues. You can place The Phantom of the Paradise on the list of works that I would file under not like so much as appreciate. I wouldn't seek it out to watch it, but I approve of what De Palma is doing with it. I appreciate it as art more than as a viewing experience. It's intellectual for me, not emotional. So take that as you will. The most important thing for me is we got through it. And I think it was a worthwhile experience, even if it was a tiny little bit embarrassingly late.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
Boy, you sure got some temper. I'm sorry. I don't know what comes over me.